The stars above the world of Vayara burned faintly like dying candles. Once the skies had been bright, full of life, full of promise. But now the heart of the Vayari system, the ancient star called Talis Prime, was failing. Each year its light grew weaker. Each year the temperature of the planet dropped. Crops withered, oceans froze at the edges, and the people of Vayara grew desperate. The Vayari Council, leaders of the surviving cities, gathered inside the Hall of Continuance. Its tall glass walls looked out upon a darkening horizon. Their world was ending, and worse, their enemies were circling like predators waiting for the kill. Speaker Elira, a tall Vayari with silver skin and luminous blue eyes, stood at the center. Her voice trembled but held firm resolve. We can no longer survive alone. Our star is dying, our resources dwindle, and the Drakor Empire waits for our last breath. We must send the signal. We must call for help. A murmur filled the chamber. For centuries, the idea of using the ancient galactic SOS beacon had been debated. It was a relic, built long ago by civilizations lost to history. The beacon sent a message across unimaginable distances, a cry for aid meant to reach any who would hear. But the risk was great. No one knew who might answer. Counselor Veyron, the oldest among them, rose to speak. His voice was heavy like stone. We call and perhaps no one comes. Or worse, someone does. Do you forget the stories? The ones who once answered such signals were not saviors. They were conquerors. The council fell silent. Everyone knew the legends. There was talk, whispered through trade routes, of a species unlike any other. A race born on a death world, a planet so hostile it forged creatures of terrifying resilience. They were said to be dangerous beyond reason, unpredictable, adaptable, unyielding. Humans. The Vayari had never seen them. Few had. But their reputation spread like shadow fire. The most dangerous species in the galaxy, some called them. Survivors of everything. Warriors without equal. To send the SOS meant taking the chance that they might respond. Elira's eyes swept the chamber. If we remain silent, we will die. If we call, perhaps we live. I will take that chance. One by one, the council members lowered their heads in reluctant agreement. And so, for the first time in 10,000 years, the SOS beacon was activated. The beacon was no ordinary device. It hummed with power drawn from ancient quantum cores, its spires glowing with symbols older than the Vayari language. A pulse of light invisible to the eye leapt into the void. It spread faster than light itself, leaping between folded dimensions, echoing through the galactic web like a desperate cry in the night. Somewhere, someone would hear it. The Vayari waited. Far away, light years beyond known borders, the pulse reached a place it was never meant to go. On the edge of the Sol Union's frontier, human space was alive with industry. Massive star docks orbited mineral-rich worlds. Fleets patrolled shipping lanes. Colonies spread outward, carving a path into the unknown. At Armada Command, a monitoring station deep within an asteroid fortress, a young officer leaned back in his chair, sipping recycled coffee, half bored with routine scans. The universe was usually quiet. Then his console screamed, alarms lit up. A wave of coded energy had been detected, something ancient yet unmistakable. His eyes widened as the translation algorithms worked furiously. 3 words appeared on his screen. SOS, immediate aid required. The officer swallowed hard and whispered, Admiral Hayes is going to want to see this. Within hours, the fortress became a storm of activity. Messages flashed between colonies. Ships were recalled from patrol routes. Officers gathered in war rooms. Admiral Jonathan Hayes, commander of the Deathworlder Armada, stood at the center of a holographic chamber, the signal replaying before him. He was a man shaped by a lifetime of battle, scarred, sharp-eyed, calm as stone. Around him, his staff waited. Origin? Hayes asked. A science officer answered. Outer galactic rim coordinates show a dying star system. Native transmissions confirm. They are called the Vayari. Their system is collapsing. Records indicate hostile activity nearby from the Drakor Empire. Hayes frowned. And they sent this beacon knowing we might answer? The officer hesitated. Sir, I don't think they know who would answer. It was desperation. A low chuckle came from one of the fleet captains. Poor fools. They called into the dark and we're the ones who heard. The words hung heavy in the chamber. Humanity's reputation preceded them. To most alien civilizations, humans were nightmares. creatures who wrestled with nature itself on a hostile homeworld filled with storms, predators, and constant danger. That heritage lived in their bones. To other species, war was horror. To humans, war was survival. But Hayes's expression was unreadable. He spoke at last, his voice steady. Someone asked for help. That is all that matters. We answered distress calls, always. The staff nodded. Orders were given. The Deathworlder Armada began to gather. Back on Veyara, the days grew colder. Oceans crept with ice. Cities powered down lights to conserve dwindling energy. The people huddled in silence, waiting. Some prayed. Others cursed their leaders for sending the signal. Elira walked the observation platforms at night, staring up at the dim star. She wondered if they had made a terrible mistake. She wondered if they had summoned not salvation but destruction. Then, one evening, the sky came alive. At first, it was only whispers across their sensors, disturbances in faster-than-light corridors, ripples in hyperspace. Then came the lights. One by one, massive ships emerged from folded space, their silhouettes blotting out stars. They were unlike anything the Veyari had seen. Colossal carriers, sleek destroyers, swarms of smaller escort craft, all painted in black and steel, bristling with weapons. The Armada had arrived. Veyari defense networks lit up, alarms howling. Civilian broadcasts spread panic. The skies were full of Deathworlder warships, and the people believed their end had come. In the council hall, Elira's advisors shouted in fear. They will destroy us. They came to take what little we have left. But Elira stood silent, her eyes locked on the glowing view of the sky. The humans had come fast, too fast for conquest. Their arrival was like a storm, swift and unstoppable. But conquest was slow, careful, greedy. This felt different. Moments later, transmissions cut through the static. A voice, deep and calm, spoke in perfectly translated Veyari tongue. This is Admiral Hayes of the Sol Union Armada. Your signal was received. We are here to render aid. Do not resist. Repeat, do not resist. We are not your enemy. The council chamber froze. For the first time in weeks, Elira let out a breath of hope. The Veyari did not know what to believe. Their people panicked in the streets, terrified that humanity's arrival meant slavery or annihilation. But over the next hours, something extraordinary happened. Instead of unleashing weapons, the humans deployed orbital relief platforms, giant floating stations that emitted warmth, stabilized atmospheric conditions, and dropped supplies onto the surface. Drones worked tirelessly, repairing power grids, restoring failing systems, and even planting new crops in the frozen soil. Elira stood on the balcony of the council hall as she watched human dropships descend like glowing comets. She could hear the whispers of her people in the streets below. Confusion, fear, awe. The most dangerous species in the galaxy had answered their cry for help, and they had come not with conquest, but with hope. The Veyari world was no longer silent. The sky above their cities was filled with shadows of great ships, each one large enough to eclipse moons. For centuries, their people had heard rumors of humanity, Deathworlders, the most dangerous species alive. Now those rumors floated above their heads, wrapped in steel and fire. At first, the people of Veyara trembled. Some hid in their shelters, certain that the end had come. Others stood in the streets, staring upward with awe and dread, unsure whether to weep or cheer. The council itself remained divided, but Speaker Elira watched with careful eyes. The humans had not fired. Instead, they had sent machines of aid, drones that poured warmth into frozen farmlands, power generators that revived dead cities, and water purification systems that restored life to empty reservoirs. Still, she knew there was more to come. Relief alone could not explain why the humans had brought their armada. On the human flagship, the Sol's Resolve, Admiral Hayes studied the streams of data on the holotable. A map of the Veyari system glowed in blue light, with their dying star pulsing weakly at its center. Around him, officers from dozens of colonies worked with quiet discipline. Humans were not a single world anymore. They were spread across hundreds, each colony sending its best to the Armada. Engineers from Mars, navigators from Europa, soldiers from Titan, pilots from Earth itself, all united under one banner. Status report, Hayes said. Captain Rourke, a broad-shouldered officer with a weathered face, replied. Relief stations are holding. Civilian response is cautious. Their leaders are curious but afraid. They still don't trust us, Hayes nodded. They will. Fear fades when deeds prove stronger than words. Another officer spoke. Admiral, sensors confirm Dracor fleet activity at the edge of the sector. They've seen our arrival. They'll move soon. The room grew tense. Everyone knew the Dracor reputation. Raiders, slavers, a ruthless empire that preyed on the weak. Their kind had no respect for signals of peace. To them, the Veyari's beacon had been nothing but an invitation to feast on a dying world. But now the humans had answered it first. Hayes allowed a thin smile. Then they will learn a lesson they will not forget. Meanwhile, the Veyari Council debated in panic. They brought war to our doorstep. Councillor Varen cried. The Dracor will not hesitate to strike, and now the humans will fight them here. We will be crushed between giants. Another councillor hissed in agreement. We should never have sent the beacon. We invited predators into our skies, but Elira silenced them with a raised hand. Her voice was calm, though her heart pounded. Look at what they have done in one day. Our children eat warm food again. Our cities breathe light again. They did not demand tribute. They did not enslave us. They simply came because we called. Does that sound like conquerors? The council fell quiet. Some looked away in shame, others in doubt. But deep down, even the most fearful among them could not deny the truth. Elira added, Yes, danger comes, but for the first time we are not alone. Across the Armada, preparations grew. Massive carriers opened their bays, releasing swarms of automated drones that built defensive platforms around the planet. Human engineers worked side by side with curious Veyari technicians, teaching them how to stabilize failing reactors and repair shield systems. The Veyari marveled at human methods. They were quick, improvising solutions from broken scraps. Where the Veyari hesitated, humans acted boldly, as if danger itself was their natural environment. One Veyari engineer whispered to his companion, They treat every problem like a battle. Every broken wire, every failing circuit, they attack it with full force. And his companion replied softly, Perhaps that is why they survive when others fall. On the surface, the first meeting between humans and Veyari civilians took place in a ruined market square. Human soldiers in armored suits removed their helmets, showing faces lined with exhaustion but lit with steady smiles. They offered food packs, water, and medicine. Children peeked out from behind their parents. Slowly, curiosity won over fear. A brave Veyari child approached a soldier and touched the strange fabric of his uniform. The soldier laughed gently, kneeling to offer her a ration bar. She tasted it and beamed. The crowd stirred. Murmurs turned into cautious laughter. For the first time in many cycles, the people of Veyara felt a spark of hope. Back aboard the flagship, Hayes reviewed strategy with his commanders. The Dracor will come in force, he said. They see weakness here. What they will not expect is us. They think humans are myths, scattered stories. They do not understand the Armada. He turned to the holomap where blue icons representing human fleets shimmered. We are not here to conquer. We are here to protect. The Veyari sent a call and we answered. But make no mistake, if the Dracor test us, we will show them why humanity is feared. His officers nodded grimly. They knew what was coming. In the following days, the Veyari learned more about their unexpected allies. Human scientists studied the failing star, calculating its remaining life. They explained that the star could not be saved, but the people could. Plans were drawn to move cities, stabilize habitats, and create orbital platforms to hold the Veyari population when the star finally collapsed. Elira walked with Hayes through the grand halls of the council city. She had expected arrogance, demands, perhaps even threats. Instead, Hayes listened more than he spoke. His questions were simple. What do your people need? How can we help you survive? She finally asked him why. Why would your kind risk so much for strangers? Hayes paused, his weathered face unreadable. Then he said, Because once, long ago, we were the ones crying into the dark, and no one came. We swore, if we gained the strength, no voice would go unanswered again. Elira felt her heart stir. She saw not just steel and fire in the humans, but memory, pain, and determination forged from loss. Above, the Armada continued to grow. Reinforcements poured in from nearby colonies. Fast frigates, heavy destroyers, supply ships, and medical cruisers. The skies around Veyara blazed with human might. each vessel carrying the legacy of Earth's dangerous homeworld. The Veyari began to call them not conquerors, but guardians of the signal, yet peace could not last. On the third cycle after the Armada's arrival, sensors flared across the system. A massive fleet was approaching, hundreds of warships, jagged and cruel, their hulls marked with the crimson insignia of the Drakkar Empire. The Veyari's worst fear had come true. In the council chamber, panic erupted. But this time, Elira stood tall, her eyes fixed on the transmission from the human flagship. Admiral Hayes appeared on the screen, calm as always. "Stay your fear," he said. "The Drakkar came to prey on the weak, but they will find only strength here. We will hold the line." The humans moved with swift precision. Fleets repositioned, carriers launched fighters, and orbital platforms lit their cannons. Human soldiers braced for boarding actions, while engineers sealed planetary shields. For the Veyari, it was like watching a storm being built from nothing. Where their own fleets had been scattered and weak, the humans moved like one body, disciplined, relentless, unafraid. And above all, the humans smiled. They were going to war, and for them, war was simply another form of survival. As the Drakkar fleet entered the system, their commanders expected an easy conquest. They had come for plunder and slaves. What they found instead was the Deathworlder Armada waiting in silence, engines burning like the eyes of predators. The stage was set. The most dangerous species in the galaxy had answered the SOS. And now, the galaxy would witness why humanity was both feared and needed. The dark edge of the Veyari system boiled with fire. From the depths of hyperspace, the Drakkar fleet arrived. Their ships were jagged and cruel, shaped like the talons of some ancient beast. Hundreds of them spread across the void, blotting out the stars. Their engines burned with red light, their weapons humming like thunder before a storm. To the Veyari, watching from the surface, the sight was enough to freeze their blood. Their own defense fleet was too weak, their weapons too old. Against the Drakkar, they would have been swept aside in minutes. But this time, they were not alone. Above Veyara, the Deathworlder Armada held its ground. On the human flagship Sol's Resolve, alarms pulsed through every deck. Officers moved with calm precision, their voices steady over the intercoms. Fighters launched from carriers. Drones swarmed like schools of fish, each one armed with missiles and plasma lances. Shields powered up across massive capital ships, glowing faintly blue. Admiral Jonathan Hayes stood in the center of the command deck, his hands resting behind his back as he stared at the incoming storm. His expression was hard yet calm, like stone weathered by centuries of wind. Captain Rourke approached. "Drakkar numbers exceed ours, Admiral. They outgun us 2-1, Hayes didn't blink. Then we will have to be smarter, not stronger. Ready the line." In the Veyari council chamber, panic echoed. "They will destroy us all," cried Counselor Varen. "The humans cannot stop them, no one can." Speaker Elira raised her hand sharply, her eyes steady and unshaken, fixed on the live transmission from the human flagship. Hayes stood at the center, preparing his fleet without hesitation. "They can," Elira whispered, "and they will." The Drakkar sent a transmission first. The screen filled with the image of a snarling commander, his scaled skin glistening under crimson light. His voice rumbled like gravel. "Veyari, you should have known better. You call for aid and you invite predators into your nest. Now you will lose everything. Humans leave or die beside them." Admiral Hayes leaned forward, his voice low and steady. "You made one mistake," he said. "You assumed weakness. But the moment the SOS reached us, this world was no longer yours to claim. If you want it, you'll have to take it from us." The Drakkar commander sneered. "So be it." The transmission cut moments later. The first wave of enemy ships surged forward. The battle began. The Drakkar charged like a tide of fire, their ships firing plasma cannons and missile storms. The void lit up in blazing streaks of light. Explosions rippled across the darkness, but the humans did not falter. "Hold the line," Hayes ordered. The first rows of human ships absorbed the assault, their shields flaring bright as they withstood the storm. Then, with ruthless precision, the Armada struck back. Swarms of drones darted through the chaos, weaving between enemy ships, firing torpedoes into weak points. Fighters sped past like streaks of lightning, cutting down Drakkar interceptors with disciplined maneuvers. On the surface of Veyara, the people watched the sky blaze. Streams of fire lit the heavens like stars being born and dying in moments. Their world trembled, but they saw something no Veyari had ever seen before. Humans standing against the impossible and refusing to break. Inside the flagship, reports poured in. Enemy frigates destroyed. Shields holding at 70%. Outer platform Sigma 4 lost, but its drones took 5 Drakor ships with it. Hayes listened, eyes scanning the tactical map. He could see the Drakor's strategy: overwhelm, crush, enslave. It was the same tactic used by predators since the dawn of time. But humans were predators too. And predators who had learned to hunt on a death world did not fight the same way as others. Order the flanking squadrons forward, Hayes commanded. Break them into smaller packs. Make them chase shadows. The Veyari Council watched in awe as human tactics unfolded. Instead of meeting brute force with brute force, the Armada split into smaller strike groups, darting in and out like wolves surrounding a larger beast. They attacked weak points, retreated, then struck again from unexpected angles. Drakor ships used to overwhelming weaker prey grew frustrated and careless. They pursued one human squadron only to be ambushed by another. Counselor Veyron whispered, almost in disbelief, "They fight like chaos itself." Elira shook her head. "No, they fight like survivors. Every move is life or death to them. That is why they win." In the thick of the battle, a Veyari transmission cut through the static. One of their small defense ships, damaged but still flying, called out desperately, "We cannot hold. We are surrounded." Before Hayes could respond, a human frigate diverted course at full speed. The Indomitable, its engines blazing, rammed through enemy fire to shield the Veyari vessel. Its hull burned, but it held the line, unleashing a storm of missiles until the attackers were scattered. The Veyari ship limped away, saved. The human frigate drifted smoking, half its systems gone but still alive. On the surface, the Veyari people cheered. For the first time in their history, another species had bled for them. But the Drakor were not defeated yet. Their second wave arrived, massive capital ships, armed with planet-cracking cannons. The sky shook as their weapons charged, aiming not just for the Armada but for Veyara itself. "They mean to burn the world," Captain Rourke said grimly. Hayes narrowed his eyes. "Then we'll stop them before they fire." He gave the order. "All strike wings, prepare for boarding." The Veyari Council gasped when they heard. To board enemy ships in the middle of battle was madness. It was suicide, but to humans it was instinct. Dropships launched from carriers, streaking through fire like meteors. They slammed into the hulls of Drakor warships, cutting through metal with burning drills. Human Marines poured out, their armored boots echoing on alien decks. Where other species hesitated, humans adapted. They fought with anything, rifles, blades, even torn pipes if needed. They turned enemy ships into battlegrounds, forcing the Drakor to fight inside their own vessels. One by one, the great cannons meant to destroy Veyara fell silent. Elira and her council watched in stunned silence. "They are not only dangerous in ships," whispered one counselor. "They are dangerous everywhere." Elira nodded slowly. "Now you see why they are called Deathworlders. And now you see why they survive." Hours passed. The void was a graveyard of shattered ships and drifting wreckage. The Drakor fought savagely, but the humans fought harder, their fury sharpened by instinct and discipline alike. At last, the enemy flagship, crippled and burning, turned to flee. The rest of the Drakor scattered with it, retreating into the void. A cheer erupted across the Armada. The battle was won. On the surface of Veyara, the people poured into the streets. They looked up at the sky, no longer in fear but in wonder. The humans had faced the nightmare that haunted their world, and the humans had driven it back. For the first time in generations, the Veyari felt safe. In the council chamber, Elira received a private transmission. Admiral Hayes appeared on her screen, tired but steady. "The threat is beaten," he said, "but not gone. They will return. You must be ready." Elira bowed her head. "Without you, we would not exist to prepare." "We owe you everything," Hayes shook his head. "You owe us nothing. You called and we answered. That is enough." For a moment, Elira studied his face. She saw not just a warrior, but a guardian, carrying the weight of a promise older than she could understand. Perhaps the galaxy had been right to fear humanity, but perhaps she thought it had also been wrong to fear them alone. The stars were quiet again. The wreckage of battle drifted in silence, glowing faintly against the dying light of the system's star. The humans began repairs, gathering the wounded, rebuilding defenses. The Veyari people celebrated, but deep inside a question remained. The humans had come as saviors. But what price, if any, would be asked later? For now, though, only one truth mattered. The Deathworlders had stood between them and extinction, and the galaxy would never forget what it had witnessed. The calm after the battle lasted only a heartbeat. The Veyari skies shimmered with drifting wreckage, the remnants of the Drakkar fleet scattered across space like broken stars. The people of Veyara cheered, celebrated, and cried all at once. For the first time in centuries, hope had returned. But the humans, Admiral Hayes and his armada, did not rest. From the observation deck of the flagship Sol's Resolve, Hayes stared at the distant edge of the system, his eyes sharp and calculating, scanned sensors still glowing with warnings. "Recon shows more movement," reported Captain Rourke. "The Drakkar are regrouping. They have called reinforcements from nearby systems. Estimates. Over 500 warships." Hayes's jaw tightened. They did not learn from the first encounter. "That is their mistake. Do we strike first, sir?" asked Lieutenant Callan, a young tactical officer. Hayes shook his head slowly. "No, we hold. The Veyari must see strength before we strike. The trial is not just for them, it is for us. They need to understand the danger their allies can face, and the power they can command when united." On Veyara, the Council watched the humans prepare. Fear lingered, but curiosity mixed with awe. The people could now see how humans operated, not as conquerors, but as warriors, as protectors, and as strategists who thrived in situations where most species would crumble. Illyra walked among her people in the city below. The warmth of the relief drones and newly repaired power grids contrasted with the chill of fear still lingering in their hearts. "They are not gods," whispered a Veyari soldier. "But they are closer than anything else we have ever known." Illyra nodded. "No, they are human, and that is enough." High above the planet, the first signs of the new Drakkar fleet appeared. It arrived in waves faster than before, with massive cruisers leading the charge. The red glare of their engines lit the outer edges of the system. "This is no raid," Rourke said, voice low. "They intend to annihilate us and the planet." Hayes did not flinch. "Then we will give them a fight worthy of legends." The humans deployed orbital defense platforms, each bristling with energy cannons and automated drones. Massive carriers released swarms of fighters while planetary shields hummed to life, creating protective barriers over cities. Veyari civilians watching from below gasped as streaks of human ships darted through space like comets. Every movement was precise, every strike coordinated. The humans seemed to anticipate enemy maneuvers before they happened, adapting instantly to each threat. "They move like predators in a storm," Counselor Veyron whispered. "I have never seen anything like it." Illyra remained calm. "They fight like survivors. That is the difference." The first wave of the Drakkar fleet slammed into the human defenses. Explosions lit space, scattering debris. Enemy fire tore through some outer drones, but human shields absorbed most of the impact. Fighters darted in and out, striking enemy frigates before vanishing into the void. Swarms of automated drones engaged in close combat, tearing through hulls with precision drills and plasma cutters. On the surface, the Veyari saw humans board Drakkar ships mid-battle, appearing suddenly on enemy decks. They fought with incredible courage and discipline, disabling weapons and turning enemy fire against their own ships. "It is madness," Counselor Veyron whispered. "And yet, they survive," Illyra smiled faintly. "Not madness, humanity." Hours passed. The Drakkar regrouped and sent a second, larger wave, determined to crush the human fleet and the planet itself. This time, Hayes allowed a controlled retreat, drawing the Drakkar into a trap. "Prepare boarding squads," he ordered. "Lure them closer to the inner defense grid." The humans pulled back just enough to tempt the enemy, then unleashed swarms of drones from hidden carriers, striking at weak points in the Drakkar formation. Simultaneously, human frigates launched lightning-fast attacks from angles no enemy could anticipate. The Drakkar were furious and confused. They expected a simple battle, a direct fight, but humans did not fight the way any other species did. "They are impossible to predict," one Drakkar captain growled. "They are chaotic." Hayes's grin was faint, almost imperceptible. "No," he muttered. "They are human." The Veyari watched in disbelief as the humans demonstrated tactics they had never imagined. One human destroyer feinted retreat while drones and boarding teams disabled an entire Drakor cruiser from behind. Another group used debris from destroyed enemy ships as cover to ambush enemy frigates, turning the battlefield itself into a weapon. It was not just skill, it was adaptability, a hallmark of the Deathworlders. Elira felt a strange mixture of awe and hope. Her people had been saved by legends, but now they could see the truth. Humans were not only dangerous, they were heroes. Mid-battle, a crisis emerged. One of the orbital platforms protecting Veyara's largest city was under direct attack. Enemy capital ships fired devastating energy beams threatening to destroy the city below. "Sir, the platform cannot hold," called Lieutenant Callan. Hayes made a decision instantly. "Divert all drone swarms to support the platform. Launch boarding parties on their capital ship. We will save the city ourselves if we must." Dropships tore through enemy lines carrying Marines who boarded the Drakor capital. The fight was brutal. The Drakor expected human ships to stay in space. They did not expect humans inside their vessels, disabling systems and turning weapons back on their own ships. Within the hour, the platform was stabilized. The city below remained untouched. The Veyari, watching live feeds, fell silent. They had not believed such courage could exist. Hours turned into cycles. Space around Veyara became a chaotic battlefield. Explosions lit the void. Ships spun in debris clouds. Missiles streaked past satellites, lighting up the darkness like fireworks. Yet the human fleet held firm. Hayes coordinated every move, shifting formations, anticipating attacks, and exploiting every weakness. Humans adapted to every enemy tactic, changing strategies mid-battle in ways no other species could. Every Veyari ship in the system, inspired by human courage, fought alongside the Armada. But even if they faltered, Hayes's humans covered every weak point, ensuring nothing would breach the inner defenses. By the end of the cycle, the Drakor were battered and broken. Their second wave attempted to retreat, but was ambushed by a human flanking squad, leaving several capital ships destroyed and forcing a disorganized retreat. The human fleet suffered losses, but each was strategic and calculated. The Armada had taken damage but remained ready. Admiral Hayes addressed his fleet. "The trial is not over," he said. "But today we have shown them the strength of humanity. Stand ready. We will be tested again. And when we are, we will not falter." On the surface of Veyara, the people celebrated for the first time. Fires burned not from destruction but from relief. Children laughed again and the city's lights glimmered. Counselor Veyran approached Elira, his face pale but amazed. They saved us. Not just once, but again. I have never seen such power, such fearlessness." Elira nodded. "This is humanity. They are dangerous, yes, but they are also our allies. We owe them more than words can ever express." That night, as the Veyari slept, Admiral Hayes walked the observation deck alone. The stars stretched infinitely before him, quiet now, but full of threats waiting in the dark. He thought of the Drakor. They had been fierce, relentless, and cruel. But humans, born from a hostile world, forged in adversity and tempered by survival, were fiercer. He also thought of the Veyari, fragile, frightened, and desperate, yet capable of hope. And hope was worth protecting. He whispered to himself almost as a promise. "We answer the call. We fight when needed, and we survive, always." By dawn, the Veyari had a new understanding of the humans above them. Legends were no longer just stories. The Deathworlder Armada was real. They were terrifyingly capable. They were unpredictable. They were heroes. And the galaxy slowly would come to learn that when humanity answers a call for help, no force, no matter how mighty, can stand unchallenged. The void of space had quieted once more. The Drakor fleet, broken and humiliated, had retreated beyond the Veyari system. Their warships, battered and smoking, fled to regroup. The Veyari world, though fragile, had survived. The planet's cities hummed with life restored, powered by human ingenuity and courage. And above it all, the Deathworlder Armada lingered, vigilant and unyielding. On the surface, the people of Veyara gathered in the city squares, staring at the sky above. The Armada's ships hung like silent guardians, their engines dim, their weapons sheathed, yet radiating an aura of absolute power. For the Veyari, disbelief and awe battled with joy. Their dying world had been touched not by conquerors, but by heroes. Speaker Elira moved among the people, calming fears, answering questions, and sharing what she could. Children pointed at the glowing ships, whispering in awe. Farmers and laborers stared upward, imagining lives saved, homes rebuilt, and futures restored. "It feels impossible," one Vayari said to another. "We were dying, and yet they came." Illyra nodded. "Yes, and we were not the only ones who survived. They survive because they choose to. That is why humanity is humanity." In the flagship Soul's Resolve, Admiral Hayes watched the system's activities through the observation deck's viewport. The calm of space seemed fragile, as if holding its breath. Captain Rourke approached. "Sir, the Vayari are celebrating, but I detect increased communications from nearby systems. Word of the SOS and our response is spreading." Hayes exhaled slowly. "Of course it is. The galaxy will take notice. Let them. Fear is a tool, but hope is stronger. They now know there is a species willing to answer cries for help, no matter the risk." Lieutenant Callan, still young but sharp, asked, "Do you think they'll trust us, sir? After all this?" Hayes's lips curved slightly. "They already do. But the galaxy will have to learn the hard way. Humans are dangerous, yes, but we are not enemies to those who call for aid. That is the difference." Across the system, human engineers and Vayari scientists worked side by side. Repairs to orbital platforms continued, power systems were strengthened, and new habitats began construction for the population displaced by the dying star. Humans shared knowledge openly, teaching the Vayari to operate machinery, repair ships, and stabilize cities. A young Vayari engineer, Celan, marveled as human drones fixed a collapsed bridge in minutes. "They think like no one I have ever seen. They see every possible outcome at once." Another scientist, Tirak, nodded. "Yes, they adapt faster than we can even predict. They are terrifyingly clever." Illyra overheard them and smiled faintly. "They survive where others would fall. That is their secret. That is why they are humanity." Despite victory, Hayes knew the danger was not over. The Drakar would regroup, and other hostile species might see Vayara as a weak world ripe for conquest. Yet humans did not retreat. "Our task is not only to save," Hayes told his officers. "It is to leave them capable of survival. Every system we touch must be stronger than before we leave it. Every life we save must be able to defend itself later. That is how humanity answers a call." Days passed. Vayara's cities thrived under human guidance. Children played safely in streets that once froze under the dying star. Farmers harvested fields once thought lost. The Vayari fleet, once weak and scattered, trained alongside human instructors, learning new tactics, adapting new technology, and preparing to defend their home if danger returned. Counselor Vayran, who had doubted the beacon's call, approached Illyra. His expression was humbled. "They came for us, and yet they asked for nothing," he said quietly. "We feared them. We should have known better. They are not only dangerous, they are noble." Illyra nodded. "They are human, and yes, we were lucky to call them." One evening, Hayes contacted Illyra directly. A holographic image of the Admiral appeared in the council chamber. "Speaker Illyra," he began, "your people have survived today because they asked for help. Remember this, the SOS signal is not a call for conquest nor a surrender. It is a call for hope, and we answer hope always. But if you are ever threatened again, we will not hesitate to act. That is the promise of the Deathworlder Armada." Illyra felt a wave of relief. "You have changed our history. Perhaps the galaxy will change too because of you." Hayes shook his head. "The galaxy will always be the galaxy. We only show what is possible when courage meets choice." In the coming cycles, word of humanity's response spread beyond the Vayari system. Traders, explorers, and distant colonies began speaking of a species that answered SOS signals. A species so unpredictable and dangerous that enemies dared not approach lightly, yet so principled that aid was given freely to those in need. The galaxy whispered the stories of the Deathworlder Armada, a fleet that faced overwhelming odds and won. Warriors who fought aboard enemy ships with nothing but determination and skill. Engineers and medics who restored dying worlds to life. A species who survived where others could not, and brought hope to those who were ready to die. For the Vayari, it was not just survival. It was a lesson in strength, courage, and choice. The Drakar, meanwhile, regrouped far away. Their commanders spoke in fear of humans who had fought them so fiercely, adapting in ways no other species could match. They began spreading stories of the Deathworlders, warning other systems of the peril they represented. and humans did not respond with arrogance. They did not conquer, enslave, or demand tribute. They simply prepared for the future, knowing that their presence had changed the balance of power and that one day they might be needed again. Elira walked the repaired streets of her capital city one morning. Children laughed as humans played with them, teaching games that combined physical skill with logic and teamwork. Farmers harvested crops planted by drones. Engineers and scientists worked together on new defensive systems. She paused, watching a small human girl hand a water pack to a Vayari child. Smiles were exchanged without words. Humanity had arrived as saviors, but their influence extended beyond battle. They had given life, courage, and knowledge. The most dangerous species in the galaxy, Elira whispered, and the most hopeful. Hayes, back aboard the Sol's Resolve, looked toward the distant star, Talis Prime, now fading yet no longer a symbol of despair. Humans had brought survival where extinction had loomed. They had faced the Dracor and won, not through sheer numbers alone, but through ingenuity, courage, and determination. He knew more battles would come. Other species would test humans, other crises would arise. But for now, humanity had answered a call and proven what it meant to survive, adapt, and protect. He addressed the fleet over comms, his voice calm yet commanding. Record this not as a victory but as a promise. We answer distress calls. We fight when needed. And we endure always. That is what it means to be human. Months later, as the Vayari rebuilt their world, they began to train their own fleet with the guidance of the humans. They learned the lessons of courage, adaptability, and discipline. No longer would they be helpless against those who threatened them. Humanity had not only saved them, they had empowered them to survive and thrive. Elira looked out at the stars once more. The SOS that had reached the most dangerous species in the galaxy had changed everything. The Vayari had survived. But more importantly, they had hope, and they had allies unlike any the galaxy had ever known. And somewhere in the cold, infinite void, the Deathworlder Armada waited, not for glory, not for conquest, but for the next call for help. For humans, survival was instinct. For others, hope was the gift they brought, and together, they had reshaped a galaxy that would never forget the SOS that reached the most dangerous species. Part 5 concludes the story, tying together HFY themes, human courage, ingenuity, hope, and altruism, leaving a legacy of survival, respect, and inspiration across the galaxy.